Jesse Watson.
Now then, this is my brief 101 guide to solo guerrilla filmmaking on mobile or any other camera you wish to choose. Personally, I've been using mobile recently because it's super simple and I can be very spontaneous with it. In this guide, I've compressed down the 10 years I've spent improvising guerrilla films and several years I spent as a performer and designer working in the dramatic arts in the theatre. So here I'm compressing down the most useful rules of thumb to bear in mind if you want to go out and start making your own film, be it of a documentary style or a dramatic action film, whatever it may be. It will all serve purpose. In this, I'm going to give you a brief overview of a workflow and a method by which you can go out and, if you haven't storyboarded a film, you can go out and gather the right kind of footage so that when you come to edit it, you'll have everything you need to inject narrative and drama into your video. In that, I'm going to cover the basics of camera angles and their impact on the viewer. I'm going to cover the building of tension and likewise dividing up your action to make it punchy and clear to the viewer. So, without further ado, let's dig in. The beginning is always a good place to start. So here are two classic opening scenes which you can play with to begin your film and introduce your character. Firstly, one you will see used many times, the camera starting a long way away from the protagonist's or the protagonist's house and zooming in. Sometimes they go really crazy with it and you'll see them almost starting out in space, zooming in, down, and on that journey you see the city where the person is. You get lots of information. You'll see their house, where they are, perhaps they're in suburbia. You'll see their well-kept lawn. You'll see the protagonist mowing his lawn, and through that vision, as you zoom down from the outside world into the intimate space of that protagonist, you get to find out lots of things about them, and the whole scene is set. Welcome in that one opening shot. Therein, all the information is given over to the viewer and they're drawn in to the world of the character. Conversely, if you see horror or thriller films, you often see a baddie being introduced where they use a completely different method and don't give the viewer any of the information or a very small amount of information. Therein, you will often see that classic of a shadow going across the wall. Perhaps a black-gloved hand will reach in and turn a door handle. You might see the back view of the protagonist, of the baddie, coming past. All the time, while that is happening, the viewer is put in a state of tension, questioning who is this person they're watching. They're not allowed to see the character's face. They're not allowed to learn who they are. And that question builds tension. That's a very important device. If you retain information, you don't tell the viewer everything they want to know, they become agitated, waiting to learn the answer. A very useful technique to bear in mind. The distance between the camera and your protagonist can have a huge effect on the feeling the viewer gets in watching that scene. To begin with, a mid-shot where you see the head and the body. There are various other technical terms. These are divided up, whether you see the body and the feet. You can go into more detail in other videos in that. But a basic mid-shot where you see the head and some of the body gives quite a neutral aspect. It's a position where we would normally talk to each other, standing, say, a metre apart. The closer in you get, the more intense it gets, obviously. If you come right in, you can then get a lot of emotion in that shot. You can see the eyes, or you might just see a shaking hand. Shots of that sort illustrate precise details of emotion, and can give a lot of intensity. Conversely, a long shot, obviously you see a lot of the setting, and that gives a much more relaxed, observing feel, like you're on the outside observing. You can use that. Sometimes it's used in films. If you'll see it in a spy film, if you don't know who's observing, if the camera's slightly behind a tree, you can be watching someone from a distance. It gives an entirely different feel. Ooh, it's getting stormy. Another aspect with a long shot is if you go from a really close-up shot to a long shot suddenly, you can make a character look very small in a great big world. The distance between your character, the protagonist, and the camera, you can use that creatively and combine them. If you go from a mid-shot, a neutral shot, and zoom in, as you might see in some of my recent videos, you escalate the energy, build it, and create immediate impact and tension. Conversely, if you're close in to the protagonist and you zoom out or widen the angle, you can suddenly take in the scene, and the viewer is put in the position again of the character, his attention going from inside looking out. If you're working on your own, you can cheat, and instead of having somebody moving the camera closer to you, you can simply move closer to the camera. If you've got the white sky behind you, for example, you can cheat it so you don't realise it's the character moving and not the camera. There are some tricks I've been using recently with that, where instead of using tracking shots, for example, I've just been running on the spot in front of the camera. The height of the camera has a hugely powerful effect on the way we perceive the protagonist or the character. It affects a primal part of our minds. As humans, we're used to dealing with height like that. With children, for example, I am now in a dominant position over you. You feel like a child, like a little person. Whereas if you are looking at me from up there, I look submissive, and I'd have a great deal of difficulty intimidating you from this position. Down here, I could tower over you, or take on a heroic form. At least I can make an effort to. To find a neutral aspect, being on the same eye line as somebody, we are now talking as equals. Isn't that nice? Tut tut tut, Jesse. Don't go there, brother. So, one note with those things. Those devices, you don't have to use them continually. But if you introduce a character in that way, you can immediately tell the viewer their status. That's the term which is generally used in the performing arts and everywhere else. But that can really help to introduce a character and place them in the mind of the viewer, place their status in the mind of the viewer straight away. But you don't have to do it constantly. You can do, but you don't have to. Once it's there, it goes into the mind and it's set, as with many things. Last mention as far as camera placement and camera shots go, we have tracking shots with moving the camera horizontally past a protagonist, or panning shots, but those don't have anywhere near as immediate visceral impact on our emotions as a viewer. They're more used technically to describe a scene, those kind of operations. They're not generally used to project immediate feeling and narrative. Another thing you'll see today often used, which is used more in contemporary filmmaking, a device people use, is a shaking handheld camera. See that the Blair Witch Project was the film which made that technique kind of quite famous. That obviously makes a very live feel, a feeling of immediacy, whereas a steady camera on a tripod will create a much more cinematic feel. Now, I'm going to try and give you a quick summary of the methodology I use today, or I've been using most recently, when I come to try and improvise films that are not storyboarded. So this is for use when you're going out and you want to make a quick film for your YouTube channel or whatever, and you don't want to get into weeks and months of storyboarding. You want to produce a quick, fun film. To do that, personally, in my latest project, that Thor project, for example, I did have a story I'd already written that I was trying to illustrate in my film. So I began with long shots. Filming, for example, I began with the camera set some 30 yards away from my tent, filming the whole scene of Thor running up to the front of the door and starting hammering on it. I knew that was one full scene. That was going to be one full sequence, so to speak. As I'm doing that, I did several takes and developed my performance slowly, and as I'm going, I'm developing that character and getting to grips with what I'm doing a bit each time I run a take. Then I started moving the camera around, moving the camera into mid shots, putting it behind him, putting it in front of him. They may not have all ended up in the finished edit, but they're there. So I've got each scene from a different angle, which, if you're just working on your own, and as am I, just with a phone, that gives the cheat of having multiple cameras at work. So you're just rerunning the scene, obviously. Through that process, working that through each scene, I'm slowly laying out in my mind's eye a much more detailed image of what the finished film is going to look like, and through that I'm finding the places where things are getting interesting and I want to add stuff in later. Once that mapping out of the main body of the scenes has been completed, with those long and mid shots showing all the action in each shot, I then move on to a second stage, which is doing cutaways. That's all the close-ups and getting emotional shots. Might simply mean standing in front of the camera going doing different expressions, giving a little bit of a cartoony aspect sometimes. It's personally something I enjoy. But through that process, though you may not be certain where each of those shots is going to be used, compiling a library of those cutaways in the character, whatever it is, and the close-ups of specific bits of action, that creates a library that you can use when you come to editing to inject intensity and a cinematic quality into your edit. Pacing is one of the most important aspects to create energy in your edit. The speed at which you transition from one shot to the next. If you look at a music video, which is meant to draw the eye in, for sort of a low concentration viewer, you might say, you've got lots of fast cuts often. If you look at, conversely, Akira Kurosawa, for example, he uses a lot of very slow panning shots, which gives a very different, observant, calm aspect to the viewing experience. So, if you're not storyboarding, through that previous process mentioned of shooting each scene from different angles, part of that is to allow you liberty when you come to edit to create that faster transition of shots and transition to keep the energy in your edit when you want to. So, for example, if you start off and you shoot something from a long shot, then you move the camera in at 2 or 3 different positions. That gives you the option of, in editing, clipping in and getting closer to the character, injecting that energy. It's something to bear in mind, because if you use that technique in part of a scene but you only have one shot angle for a particular action, that can become problematic, because you need to keep that rhythm going once you start editing. A very simple way to think about that is like if you use short sentences, when you're talking, things suddenly start getting quite intense. He walked into the room, he looked at her, she looked back at him. Their eyes met. The energy builds when you start using short, succinct sentences. The same thing happens in editing, whereas if you start using long, flowing sentences, you get a much more fluid feel to your story, and things become calm and tranquil, perhaps. Do they? Lastly, a concept of high value to bear in mind, which comes in to the last 2 points, and that is dividing up your action. One of the first things you'll learn if you were to go to a drama school or an acting workshop is dividing up your actions. If you look at somebody like Charlie Chaplin, one of these old silent film artists, in order to project the story, they will divide up their physical actions in a very simple sense. For example, instead of when you just set off walking, instead of just setting off, they will look, move their head, and then set off walking. That gives a much clearer, punchier feel to the audience. They can see each movement and get the motivation for each action. That's something to bear in mind in your performance. If you're performing yourself in your films, for example, if you want to stand up and put a hat on, stand up and then put the hat on. It will give a clearer, more concise narrative for the audience to follow than doing 2 actions at the same time. I need to remember a lot of this stuff, actually. In my recent films I've got really sloppy in the way I'm moving. So that's something to work on with your performance, but also in the way you shoot your cutaways. That has a very similar, goes into a very similar bank of effects. Those cutaways of separate actions, separating things so that people get punctuation between each action and it clearly projects the narrative to the viewer. There you go. Those are my fundamental dramatic arts or filmic devices with which you can project narrative and meaning and your intentions of your characters, etc., into your filming in that language of the cinema that everybody is familiar with, in order to translate your concept, your ideas, your story onto the screen. My experience through working in the dramatic arts, those fundamental things, whether you be working in film or the theatre, on the stage, whatever it may be, that's really all there is to it. Obviously, you can get in depth in any number of those fields, but those fundamental rules are, working with those, you can go an awfully long way and build on them creatively to create your own works and join in that art form. Strongly encourage you to try just working on mobile. As an afterthought, I'm just working on mobile these days. I used to have computers and sound equipment and all sorts of stuff. But working, if you want to just get into improvising and working fast and creatively, there is an incredibly freeing element to just working on, shock horror, a smartphone. With that, you can record audio sound effects, you can shoot, you can edit today fairly well. There are good simple editing programs. I might post a tutorial of a simple editing program on mobile for you to use, but just with a mobile phone you can start producing some proper little films, and you don't have all the issues of transferring files and getting into all these debates of getting the best hardware and all that. If your ideas are good, and if you've got the right devices at play there, you can produce the same effect in the viewer as you would if you had an IMAX thing and a full studio at work. It's all in those narrative devices. The story, I believe, is what matters, and you can get the same energy, be it on a mobile phone or an IMAX camera. You can get the same energy onto the screen if you use those same devices. This is all they're doing in Hollywood. Okay, enjoy your filmmaking exploits. See you in a bit, dudes. Take it easy. Cheerio.
Bye.